Welcome back to another episode of Bad HOA. Today, I am joined by Marty. Welcome.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whatever they say on the Truman Show.
That works for me. Yeah, this is an exciting episode because we're looking at, it's a follow-up to the nuclear option, which is total annihilation of one's association because we're unhappy with the association.
Can we unpack that for a second?
Yes.
Because we posted this and we put it on Reddit. And again, we understood going into this is probably going to be a lightning rod.
Yes.
Because people want blood.
And it was.
They want to dismantle because that seems like the biggest like bomb. It's scorched earth. They want to feel it.
Well, and I understand that, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about this before. They're so upset. They're furious with the board.
Yeah.
And they say, well, why don't we just dismantle everything
Yeah.
and start in a different ecosystem or just essentially disband, right?
Yeah. And so we got some spicy comments on that. And I get it because this is their home and it's under attack. And the solve seems logical on just dismantling the whole thing. Like when this goes away, and then the thought is, well, all of these, and I saw comments, well, homes have been without an HOA for hundreds of years, and now's the problem.
Right.
But as we unpacked in the episode, it's really not the problem of the structure isn't the problem because there's plenty of good HOAs that run and they can run really well.
Right.
And then a lot of people are attracted to them in the first place for a reason.
Well, they have a utility. And when we sort of looked at the tape and we played the tape out, say, okay, let's say you dismantle that HOA.
Yeah.
And it no longer exists.
Yeah.
What you end up with is common area that still needs to be accounted for.
Yeah.
And just very practical legal problems.
Yeah.
Not only, with that common area, who maintains, how do you pay for that? How do you, fund that?
Yeah.
But also what happens to your mortgage company? What happens to the loan? Are you in default? So there are just very practical legal issues that arise from this play. It's not that you flip a switch and everything goes back to, a non-HOA environment where everything runs smoothly.
Yeah. It was never, I think the big takeaway there is they were never designed to be dismantled. The law doesn't structure it that way. The local municipalities wanted it set up this way. Like, hey, they like having the HOAs because it takes responsibility off them. They were never designed to be dismantled. Right.
And so we're sort of set with that situation, right?
Yes.
So assuming sort of from a fundamental level that dismantling an HOA just simply doesn't work for a variety of reasons, practical reasons, how do we move forward and look at the problem a little bit differently?
Yeah.
Sort of how do we unhinge or sort of step away from this, I want to dismantle and that obsession, because it is a bit of an obsession, and move on to more proactive and productive ways of approaching these really bad problems.
Yeah. I mean, another way of saying it is, okay, nuclear options off the table. What are the alternative options?
Correct.
What are the options, the more strategic options? Because I think it's so easy to say, oh, you guys are anti-HOA. No, we're anti-bad HOA.
Right.
Like that's a huge differentiating factor. People are attracted to HOAs for a reason. People like living in HOAs. Not everybody.
Right.
But it's the good HOAs no one talks about because they're good.
They have upside.
Yeah.
They do have upside.
Yeah.
And specifically when we talk about upside, you're talking about fair market value and, the protection of the property, again, when it works.
Yeah. I think people will be shocked to know, too, as an attorney, that you yourself and many other attorneys here live in HOAs.
Well, you're in, we're in Southern California, so it's almost impossible not to.
Yeah, if your house is built post 87, you're going to be
good chance.
Yeah,
it's actually quite rare to hear people that are not in HOAs
in
our area.
But I think that goes back to we're not anti-HOA. Right. I mean, it's the bad HOA, and what is the stem of that, right? And we said last time, which is a good segue into the episode, is it's not the structure, it's the people.
Correct. 100% people driven. And it is over and over again. I mean, if you look at the book, we spent a good amount of time just identifying what makes a bad HOA and what types of personalities we see over and over and over again. I mean, it's such a pattern where you start to identify it, and we identified it internally.
Yep.
And that was the language or the lexicon that we were using. We said, hey, we have a tyrant board member, or this is a meddler. And that was really good labels because it really framed the problem.
Right.
And again, to your point, it's not necessarily the system or the structure or the regulation around it.
Yeah.
It's the people who occupy it.
Yep.
And so this episode is really focused on, okay, with that all being said, what do we do with that problem? How do we be solution focused?
Yeah. What are the actual munitions that are
Correct. Available?
Yeah, available and work.
Yes. So let's dive right in. I really like this episode, and I think it's going to be very helpful.
Great. Let's jump into it. So let's talk about what the board actually controls.
Okay.
Because I think there is another gut, like the first gut reaction is to say our property management's terrible. We need to take care of the property management, or the landscaper's terrible.
Right.
Right. And in reality, it's the board. The board, it has an obligation at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, if you back out a little bit.
Yeah.
Look at a board. Where do these obligations come from? They come from the governing documents.
Yeah.
That is what mandates that the board does very specific things: maintenance, repairs, financial. All of these responsibilities are derived from the governing documents, in addition to the Davis-Stirling Act.
Yeah.
So what you frequently see, though, is a board hiring a management company.
Yep.
And that management company is a disaster, wreaking havoc in the community.
Yep.
And it makes a lot of sense from a homeowner's perspective that says, hey, it's the management company, they're ruining the community. But under agency theory of law, the management company is an agent for the board.
Mm.
So any sort of misconduct is typically imputed back to the association.
Another way of saying it, the buck stops with the board.
With the board, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the board cannot sidestep, hey, I'm sorry that we're not maintaining the common area. It's the management company.
Mm.
It's the vendor that they hired.
Yes.
It flows upstream back to the HOA. So it's not a defense.
Yeah.
And so we can get into that, but it's a common misconception within the industry that it's somehow the management company that is ultimately the one holding the bag.
Yeah.
When it's the board members.
Yeah. Let's unpack a little bit of we'll just fire off a couple bullet points of what they actually control, just to set the stage, right? The hiring and firing of the management company, budget and reserve allocation, enforcement decisions, maintenance priorities, fee schedules, architectural approvals, and what gets ignored versus what gets addressed. So there's a lot of power in the board.
Without question.
Yeah.
And, as a homeowner, you are outsourcing these decisions to the board.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
Which is perfect segue on why bad boards stay in power.
Okay.
So a lot of homeowners aren't going to want to hear it, but we have to address it.
Okay.
And the biggest one is homeowner apathy.
Yeah. Well, so we can unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
And this is quite common. And so the way I see it is, if you're in a community, you really do have an obligation to be proactive.
Yeah.
If you care about the community.
Yeah.
If you bury your head in the sand, if you ignore what's happening or what's not happening with the board, it's very hard for you then to say, hey, this is a horrible board. I cannot believe the situation, because it's the homeowners that ultimately control this.
Yes.
And their engagement is required.
Yeah.
Unfortunately or fortunately. I mean, that's just a reality.
I think more people should, when you move in or decide to buy a house or put an offer on a house, you should have this in the back of your head that I need to be a willing participant in this.
There's a
in this
participation,
structure.
100%. And it's like anything else. I mean, if you ignore it, if you let it alone, bad things can happen.
Yeah.
And ultimately, these bad boards really rely upon a homeowner ignoring the situation or not understanding their rights. I mean, most of our empowerment, right? The podcast, the book, all the things that we're doing was really to alert homeowners. You have a tremendous amount of power, but you have to act on that power.
Yeah.
And so, again, bad boards thrive on sort of hoping that you never become empowered and you ignore everything that's happening.
Yeah. Listen, last home I lived in, we was in an HOA, and it's the truth. I didn't want to volunteer. Let's just call it as it is.
Right.
Like I didn't want, I got too much going on.
Right.
To care is really what it comes down to. I'm not saying that was justified or it was right. I'm just saying that that's the reality. I think in a lot of situations where people are like, I don't want to volunteer. Too much time. It's too much
Right.
effort. But that is the cause of the erosion, right? That's like in a lot of cases, that's root cause.
Well, you also have to look at it too, though. It's not necessarily binary. It's not all or nothing. It could be a situation where realistically you have jobs, you have families, you have so much going on. You cannot
100%.
volunteer to be on the board. However, you can be proactive in terms of who you vote for.
Yes.
And you can also be proactive in terms of showing up at those meetings.
Yeah.
Actually opening up the letters that come from the board, paying attention.
Yeah.
That doesn't involve full commitment, right? But it involves awareness and knowledge. And that is an investment onto itself.
But I mean, let's unpack that just a little bit. So many people are involved in at least light touch on something like as simple as an investment or
Yeah.
their investment portfolio.
Yeah.
Right? They talk to their advisors. The advisors tell them, I want you in this stock and maybe we're to spread it here. But they're involved in that. But if you think about it, in a lot of cases, this is the biggest investment you
Right.
have.
Right.
Right? And if it's mismanaged, the property value could decrease.
100%.
Right? So I think if it's reframed rather, in that lens, that this is your biggest investment and you need to be a willing participant in maintaining your investment, and that's a participation, at least light duty, in these decisions, then your investment will be preserved to the best of withstanding market conditions.
If you're looking at homeowners as a group, if the vast majority of the homeowners are aware of what's happening, it puts everyone in a better position.
Yeah.
And it really undercuts a bad board's ability to thrive.
Yeah.
They thrive in darkness. They thrive when no one's paying attention. So, for example, if all of a sudden, they start building an improvement within the neighborhood and no one has received notice, right? The chance that there's going to be an outrage is higher. But if no one's paying attention, then all of a sudden there's some sort of capital improvement that's happening right in front of the board president's house, and that's where your budget's going. But no one was paying attention to that.
Yeah.
And so there's no accountability.
Well, I think that goes back to a homeowner's lack of knowledge.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. And even about like the removal mechanisms, right? Like removing the board members, but we talk a lot about education, particularly in the lens of disputes,
Mm-hmm.
but to be educated on what the board is responsible for and what you have control over gives you that power, the knowledge to be able to make, to be involved and know what passes the smell test and what doesn't. Right. I think that's key is having that knowledge. Even if the board is bad, you having the knowledge will put you in a better position to call it out.
Yeah, or the community.
Yes.
And if there's other like-minded people, individual homeowners who say, yeah, this is wrong, banding together has such a powerful impact.
Yeah.
But that can't happen without the education, knowledge, awareness, and some time commitment.
Yeah.
So
I think that goes back to if you really want the change, I think there's a few things you can do. If the board is really bad, then what's the obvious thing in front of you is, well, change the board.
Right. 100%. 100%.
But that also means if you really want to put it in your own hands and take control, got to run, right?
You or someone that you trust.
Yeah.
And that's why, I always argue that to know the candidates is so important.
Yeah.
To actually take time to figure out who they are and sort of what their agenda or what their vision is. And again, it takes investment, though. It takes time to invest.
We all live in the neighborhood where that neighbor is so nosy. That neighbor's always meddling in someone's business. You see that they're running.
Those people typically are running.
Yeah, like there's your red flag right there. I mean, you have the control. You can do something about that.
Correct. And a lot of this can be prevented,
to
your point. Or, if historically you have someone who has occupied a board seat for 10 years and the board is in an absolute state of disrepair and, there's questions regarding the financial stability of the community. There's so many red flags that could be popping up, but yet no one pays attention and we keep electing this person.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a problem. It's going to continue to be a problem until you get proactive with it.
Exactly. Nothing's going to change unless you do something about it.
Right. And
like it's not going to just magically
100%,
disappear.
100%.
if there's enough outrage, and you guys in the neighborhood can band together, I mean, that's where real change can actually happen.
Right. Community participation and really forcing a bad board's hand in confronting the community.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, to your point, 9 times out of 10, this is your biggest asset.
Yep.
It's your biggest investment. Protect it. But
Yep.
protection requires time and investment.
Yep.
So,
let's talk about a little bit about the coalition, right? Why involvement matters. I feel like so many people just kind of take that passive approach, but realistically, the power isn't just with the single person. And we just touched upon this a little bit, but I think I want to like hit this home a little bit. If you have a complaint, it's probable that someone else has the same complaint in the neighborhood, unless you're being ticky-tacky, right?
Yeah. Well, I would actually put it into 2 buckets. There's issues that impact a community at large.
Yeah.
Right? Failure to maintain amenities.
Yeah.
Right? If you have a pool and the pool is falling apart, or a big one, security gates.
Yeah.
Security gates aren't working, or there's so many things, or just financial negligence.
Yeah.
So these are community-wide issues. So that's really where I would argue the coalition really comes into play.
Yeah.
And then there's other discrete issues that are impacting you as a homeowner.
Yeah.
Right? That's where they fail to maintain a common area drain. It causes flooding, and now your home is flooded.
Yeah.
No one else is, but it's yours.
Yeah.
And so that you sort of have these discrete issues that also impact homeowners. But on the coalition side, normally it's these more broad issues that are impacting everybody.
Good point.
Now, I mean, if it's a discrete issue and you tell your neighbor they're not maintaining the drains, well, your neighbor could be next.
Yeah.
So it could expand out to a bigger issue.
Yeah.
But the coalition, the concept there is, if people see, okay, this is a real issue impacting the community, the fair market values, it makes sense because they're aligned, right, from an objective perspective, to come together and actually do something.
Yep. Let's check out. Let's go to recall. So there are provisions in the law that talk about recalling a board. Right. But we could do which we talked about earlier. But we could do a whole episode on that, and there's a lot of nuance when it comes to the law and how to do it. And maybe we have another episode with Ryan, and we could talk strictly on voting and recalls and all that stuff.
Yeah, recall is a very powerful tool when used correctly. It's relatively easy to start accessing the process. It's through a petition. It's 5% of the members. So to get the thing going is pretty straightforward, but there are finer points within the process.
Yeah.
But it could be an effective way to get a really bad apple out.
Yeah.
But again, that goes to your coalition, that goes to awareness, that goes to community involvement.
Yeah. And sometimes the best way is just what's the next election cycle. And the CC&Rs and bylaws, do they not like specify like when those
It should be very clear.
Yeah.
Listen, if your election system is ambiguous and you don't know, that's a problem unto itself. But yeah, even bad HOAs, I would argue, have that laid out pretty clearly.
Yeah.
How elections should work.
Yeah. And to that point, you could see when the next election is and run or try to get a coalition of people that you can all agree to and say this person would be tremendous at this. Bob down the street, he's run a company for 50 years, he's retired, and like he would be tremendous at it, and he's very fair.
Yeah. It's as I see it, our audience, the viewers, our community, it tends to be the very, ones who want better for the community.
Yeah.
The bad apples don't watch the show. So yeah, you find like-minded people who are empowered, who understand their rights. They understand this is, something that benefits everybody, as opposed to taking that singular approach of, I just want to control this entire community for my own personal gain.
Yeah.
You're in a winning situation with those types of like-minded people.
Yeah. I want to we touched a little bit in the beginning of the episode, but I still think that a couple of things in terms of fiduciary are important to touch upon, right? We talked a little bit about the management company. The buck stops with the management company. but also the finances of the community, as well as like the maintenance. But more particular, I mean, more specifically, the finances. I think we never really touch upon that.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that the buck stops still with the board.
Yeah.
They're in charge at the end of the day.
Well, you mentioned fiduciary, and what that ultimately means is that the board has a heightened level of obligation to the homeowners, right? So if you look at a standard of care, that standard of care goes up because they're in such an important position. So when you're dealing with finances, right? And let's say they run the financials into the ground, that's going to be negligence because on a normal standard of care, they fell below it. But on another level, they had a fiduciary to ensure those finances were healthy.
Yeah.
And they failed that. So that often is a breach of fiduciary duty.
Yeah.
That's same with failure to maintain common areas. That duty arises from the CC&Rs. Often, I mean, 99% of the time. And when they don't, it becomes a violation of the CC&Rs. They fail to maintain. But it also becomes a breach of the fiduciary obligation they have to the homeowners. Yeah. So you start to stack these causes of action based upon maybe a singular failure.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about, they're there to set budgets, allocate reserves, and decides what gets funded. I think the hard part with a new board member coming in, right, is they can inherit a disaster. And I've seen so many people on Reddit and some of these other ones are, they get so chapped about special assessments. Can we talk? Let's unpack what a special assessment is in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a special assessment, ultimately to distill it to its very basic core, is there's some sort of financial event that requires extraordinary finances outside of the dues, right? And Davis-Stirling is very specific with special assessments, and often the CC&Rs are very specific in terms of what triggers them.
Yeah,
but look at it as there's an extra expense, and it needs to be addressed. And it could be a huge roofing project. That's a very common one, right?
Okay, so like a condo, like an HOA that's a condo or a condo association.
Correct.
The roofs are usually common area, and
Correct.
the entire thing needs to get replaced.
Yeah, and what's interesting about those is that if historically a HOA failed to maintain and repair a roof, and when I say failure to maintain, what does that mean? It's like, well, did they send roofers up there every year to inspect the condition? And with a really bad board, sometimes they haven't. They have just ignored the roof, and the life of the roof maybe was 30 years, but it's drastically been reduced because of a failure to maintain. And now a new board steps in, inspects the roof, and says, we have to get this replaced ASAP. Yeah. And that may very well trigger that special assessment. Yeah. That's how those things can arise in a community.
You know this probably pretty well, but do most HOAs have some sort of like CPA or some sort of accountant that's a third party that maintains this stuff?
They should.
Right.
Normally, with a good association, and I say a good one, you have the corporate counsel. Yes. The corporate counsel is coming in and is opining on legal. Yeah. And they're helping, sort of navigate the different, sort of tripwires of Davis-Stirling, making sure that everyone is complying. A good board also has a bookkeeper or a CPA or a financial advisor. Right. Yeah. And, ultimately, it's not, the onus isn't necessarily on the board to know everything, but a good board realizes what it doesn't know and then outsources that to professionals. Typically best practice. Yeah. Right. To, if you don't understand bookkeeping, that's okay, but find someone who does. And those financial experts can come in and help set budgets, can help even reconcile or sort of bring you out of a bad situation. And I've seen, associations that have been in absolute dire financial emergency state of affairs, right? And you get a good financial expert to come in, and they sort of scale or scaffold these associations out of that situation. Yeah. But it requires a lot of discipline, a lot of intellectual rigor to figure this out. But a good board takes those steps and invests the time, money, and energy to actually figure out how do we get out of this hole.
Let's talk a little bit about, I think, red flags and like tripwires, common mistakes. Okay. Right? A few of them would be going at it alone. I think we hammered this. If we didn't hammer this point enough, we should hammer it down here. Right. Right? is going at it alone. In so many cases, if you need sweeping changes to the board or the community, you're not going to be the one person show.
It's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
And the more you have in that coalition, for lack of a better word, the stronger you are.
Yeah.
The more impactful you are.
Yeah. The second tripwire is you decide to run, but you're running in a bad headspace, right? You're not running for solutions. You're running on anger and vengeance.
Right. And
that's not going to solve
that never works long term.
Yeah.
And not to say that, there's some perfect mindset to approach a board position, but solutions focused, community focused, that's a good start.
Yeah.
Understanding fiduciary, understanding, if you're in California, Davis-Stirling, having some basic understandings, that's a really strong starting point.
Yeah. I think this one is so important, but not understanding the bylaws and CC&Rs. I mean, so much of, I think if we look at the history of this show, so much is because people ignore or don't understand the CC&Rs and bylaws.
Well, if you look at board members, right, we talk about the DNA and the different types.
Yeah.
I mean, the incompetent or the fool.
Yeah.
And, what's interesting about them, they could get on a seat within the board and have a great vision of what they want to do. They're very altruistic. They're looking to benefit the community, but they lack any understanding of real estate, contractual law, Davis-Stirling.
Yeah.
And so that could be in and of itself very disastrous to a community.
Right.
Because, even though they're not malicious,
they
could still drive that community into the ground simply because they don't know how to run the thing.
Yeah.
They don't know what the CC&Rs are or how they impact what they do on a day-to-day.
Yeah. I mean, so much of the show is education. So many problems can be solved if you're altruistic and you have the greater good in mind. The biggest tripwire is ignorance.
Right. And you got to know how to act upon that.
Yeah.
How do you get traction? How do you, solve problems? Well, you solve problems in a community by understanding the framework.
Right.
Where does the framework come from? The governing documents.
Yeah.
State law. So you have, unfortunately, you have to embrace it.
Yeah.
And if that's not you, maybe this isn't a good position.
Yeah. The other thing is not giving up, right? At the end of the day, the homeowner does, even though we've talked quite a bit that the board has power, and I think that's the general narrative of most people is that the HOA has all of this power.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they have the board and the HOA has to abide by those CC&Rs as well.
Well, they have obligations.
They have obligations.
And they have a fiduciary duty to the homeowners.
Yeah.
And that gives the homeowners a lot of power.
Right.
Right. That's where that power source is generated.
Yeah.
So if the association, they have a lot of power, but they also have, a different way to cast that is they have obligations, responsibilities to the community at large.
Right.
And when they fail, who's empowered? It's the homeowners.
Right.
To take action.
Right. So I think don't give up. You lose the seat. It's okay. You don't get on the board. That's okay.
Right.
You still have power and you still can exercise that power. Right.
And putting it into the theme of the show, don't necessarily jump for the nuclear option of dissolving the HOA.
Right.
That might be a tremendous amount of wasted time, energy, and effort chasing that, kind of going down that rabbit hole.
Right. And we have so many types of, we've done 40 plus episodes at this point, and we've outlined so many different types of disputes, whether we're talking failure to repair CC&R violations, neighbor disputes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That goes deep into detail on, okay, you have a very specific dispute. Here's how to solve it.
Right.
That you can dive into if there's something specific. So shameless plug to other episodes there. And then also, don't be the person to create the drama.
Yeah.
Right. Be the solutions person. If you want to have change, you got to be solutions driven, not just vengeance driven.
I agree. I think, you see it over and over again, the angry, visceral, vengeance-minded, they have vengeance in their mind person, that doesn't operate in a system of teamwork ultimately, right? It creates weird results. But if you come across, clinical, focused, educated, and again, solution focused, that's where real impact happens. And take the ego out of it.
Yeah.
if you can remove that ego and simply look at it, like a scientist would. Hey,
Yeah.
we have a problem. Here are the big problems that we have in this community.
Yeah.
How do we tackle this?
Well, it goes back to, the same thing. You lose the board seat. You don't get on the board. And now you're just saying, I want to burn this thing to the ground. I want vengeance. Like, is that going to solve the original problem of there's this dysfunction in my neighborhood? No, you're just going to be adding fuel to that dysfunction.
Or just huge distraction.
Yes, exactly. All right. So let's go some key takeaways of the episode. So I think that the big thing is if there's a major problem in the running of the community, changing the board, changing the people that are on that is probably the most direct path.
The DNA.
Change the DNA.
Yep. I
think that's a great way of saying it. You keep the bad board, you keep all the problems. And there's really no shortcut. Yeah. Okay, so the tools that you have, elections, right? Recall, and we'll go into the
I'd like that.
a whole episode of that. And then the Davis-Stirling creates a lot of rights and procedures. So dive into that. I think we'll do a whole new episode if you want to hear it.
Yeah. Let us know.
Yeah. And then if you're going to run, what is the honest assessment? Can you commit to it for a couple of years realistically, right?
Possibly,
are you willing to commit? Can I recruit 2 to 3 candidates, right? Can I organize 10 to 20 homeowners for a coalition, right? Am I willing to serve on the board? And I think the last one, the honest assessment is, do I have a thick skin?
You need a very thick skin. Because you're going to come up against resistance.
Yes.
Of course you are. That's the nature of the role, ultimately.
Well, and there's people that are just going to have a bug. You know what I mean? That they have.
Well, yeah. If you displace a bad board member,
yep,
they're going to have an axe to grind with you.
Yeah.
Everything you're doing, even though it's maybe well within the confines of the CC&Rs, well within the mandates of Davis-Stirling, and you are seeking and your vision is the betterment of the whole community.
Yeah,
you're going to have people who are going to hate on you.
Yeah. Well, and to the extent that you're not willing to run for the board or try to make change in the coalition, I think it's if you have a very specific dispute type, you still have rights,
right?
And to try to resolve that dispute type within the realm of the law, right?
And maybe the final point is if you want nothing to do with the board, you don't want to run, at minimum, just read the documents, stay aware, be aware of what's happening in the community.
Yeah, education.
Bottom line.
Yeah.
Because I like the point. I mean, listen, you track the stock market if you invest in the stock market. I mean, you might as well read those letters that hit your inbox.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
Can't complain if you don't participate.
Correct. I think that's a nice way to finish this episode. So
Perfect.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for watching. Again, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. We love the comments. And then if you want to go a little step further, go to the subreddit, Bad HOA. We monitor that. We participate in that. And that gives us great ideas for the shows. So thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time.